Well, hello, folks. I'm Cuz Strickland. Welcome to the Wildlife Ridge Outdoors Podcast, brought to you by Mossy Properties, Hart Realty. We specialize in selling farms, land, recreational hunting, and residential properties right here in the great state of Kentucky. Whether you're a seasoned hunter or new to the great outdoors, this podcast is your go-to resource. We'll dive deep into everything from land and farm management to conservation, hunting tips, and don't worry, there'll be plenty of hunting stories along the way. If you're passionate about the outdoors, you're in the right place. Our goal here is to help each of you live your best life outdoors.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Wildlife Ridge Outdoors Podcast, brought to you by Mossy Properties, Hart Realty. I'm your host, Paul Thomas. Today I have my co-host here, Cameron Clonch, and we have a great guest that's going to be on here today, and I'm sure is going to educate you, give you some little good stories along the way, and have a lot of fun with it, be very educational. So, hey Cameron, how's your turkey season going? What's up and what's going on with you and what's new?
Man, it's going pretty good. I missed opening day. I can't remember the last time I did that, but I promised my family that I'd go with them on a vacation out of state to Arizona back in December, not realizing that it was going to fall during opening day of turkey season. But I mean, missed opening weekend, and I guess yesterday was basically my first day in the woods. And like I was telling you earlier, I've already been whipped, so I'm kicking myself in the teeth right now because about an hour and a half ago or so, I was on a bird and thought I was going to be able to get the job done, but he pretty much did the exact opposite of what I thought he was going to do. But you know, that's why they call it hunting, not killing. So. And I also didn't want to take a long shot either. I guess you could have killed him or anybody else could have killed him, but I don't like to take a long shot. He's probably between 50 and 60 yards. But if they're not inside 40, I don't really want to pull the trigger. So.
No, I understand that totally. I had kind of a similar situation I was telling y'all earlier, out sitting in the blind, minding my own business, just waiting. And then all of a sudden, three of them, come on a dead run, heading towards the decoy deal that I had set up. And by the time I really got up on them and was ready to shoot, they realized that they had screwed up, and they turned and basically hauled butt the other way. So I missed a good opportunity there. So I had to drag myself back to the house and lick my wounds myself. So, but today we've got a great guest that's going to be on here with us. He's somebody that I think the world of. He's very involved in the community, in the outdoors, and he supported me along the way in all the different things that I've done. And in return, I've always tried to support a lot of the programs and things that he does. So I'd like to introduce you tonight to Scott Cronin. Hey, Scott, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good. I appreciate you having me on, Paul and Cameron. It's nice to meet you, and I enjoyed talking a little bit before we started the program about us having to possibly get together and do some turkey hunting. So now you're speaking my language during the month of April.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your family, kind of a little bit about what you do, and give us a little insight into who you are.
Well, I'm married to a beautiful lady by the name of Morgan, and we have a wonderful daughter that is just as beautiful as her mother, and they are both my pride and joy. We reside over in the most contradicting part of whether or not it's Western Kentucky or not. We're west of E-Town and live over in a county called Muhlenberg County that a lot of folks will know from the music and the coal mining back in the day. But I'm involved with education in the agricultural field. I do a lot of advanced hunter education, and through the years, I've had the opportunity and the blessing to work and grow in my potential leadership with a lot of conservation organizations and state and game agencies, and the roles and what I've served, whether it's been from research or prototyping different equipment or becoming an ambassador. And over those years, I've got to meet individuals like yourself that have truly been able to come together in what I consider a team, and being able to make success and to gain ground and not only the world of hunting and fishing and outdoor recreation, but trying to let people understand the importance of not only just owning land, but how to conserve land, and along the way, how that can be a very valuable thing that money just cannot buy.
No, I hear you there. For me, it's been a blessing to meet you, and you mentor me even along the way and introduce me to the people that you've helped me connect with. So, but one of the questions I'd like to find out is, talk a little bit about your love for the outdoors. What drew you to the outdoors?
The thing about the outdoors is it has something to offer, and it doesn't matter what month it is, it doesn't matter what time of day it is, and the diversity in which it can offer to you, no matter what your religion is or your gender is or what your income is probably where it started to connect with me, because I was a traditional kid growing up. Both of my parents were married, and they took me camping, and they loved me. I had a meal on the table every day. I had clean clothes, and money was not necessarily an issue. And when I think back on that, it's going to be important as how we go through tonight's program of what's going on with hunting in the outdoor world. But I think the fact that I got to do so much traveling as a young person with my mom and dad, and the mentors that I had besides my grandparents and my parents, it allowed me to find a way to put enjoyment in my life with the form of entertainment that developed into a lifestyle that gave me endless satisfaction. And I was always hungry to more or less go out and do the next thing. I never really wanted to get out of the outdoors. It's when I was a young kid, it was like I had the outdoors around me when I was working. I had the outdoors around me when I was fishing and camping and hunting and traveling. And it's just here I am, 46 years old, almost 47, and it's grown to not only be part of my life, it's just consumed who I am and what I do on a daily basis.
So you talked a little bit about, your love for the outdoors, and it reminded me as myself, or reminded me of myself as a kid. You talk to any of my family, and they'll tell you the same thing. Like growing up, I just always wanted to be outside, whether that be sports or fishing or hunting. Although I am young, I didn't grow up in the age of the iPad. So these iPad kids running around, but I just want to know, like, who introduced you to the outdoors?
There's a lot of people that deserve credit for getting me introduced into the outdoors, not just being mentors. And it really did start with my mom and dad taking the time to pack me and my brother up and travel across the country. And we did it every which way you could without utilizing a hotel. I mean, we camped in tents, we had RVs and mobile homes. And that was a big influence to me in my life. And my grandfather on my mother's side was definitely the fisherman, and my dad's dad, my grandfather, he was definitely kind of the hunter, more small game than whitetail deer and turkeys and waterfowl, because that's what they had to hunt. But family was so important that every day, what was traditional back then, there was a mom and a dad and a grandpa and a grandma and aunts and uncles and cousins, and all of that was so normal, and it's not now. So this question that you asked me is going to be really important as we go through the interview. But there's a lot of people out there that had influence on me and mentored me that I met and I didn't meet. And some of those organizations that I was able to be involved in, I remember how much the Boy Scouts meant to me, being a young man, and being out in the outdoors with other men to set a camp and to cook our food, to make a fire, to be able to problem solve or figure things out, how to load our packs, how to read a map, how to put a compass in your hand and get from one point to another, and do it without having to use your first aid kit. And if you had to use your first aid kit, you weren't scared. And then developing all the way through leadership and training programs that I've been selected and part of with other outdoor leaders now that we've grown into men instead of just being young boys. All that's been important, but there's farmers out there like Tommy Dibble that allowed me to have a place to hunt when I was a kid, and he took the time to teach me about certain areas that had more squirrels in them than others, or where the shagbark hickories were. You know, there's folks like Mike Vogt that took me on my first experience turkey hunting and standing at the end of the ridge in Grayson County, Kentucky, off Barton Ferry Road, where I got to hear my first eastern turkey gobble in the hardwoods. And you know, at that point in time in my life, he was a mentor, and he is today. I mean, he was 250 pounds, wearing mossy oak bottomland and greenleaf. He had a 1187 over his shoulder and a beard, and I mean, to me, that was Superman. And individuals like that will always be important to me. My Uncle Billy, when we would be at a Christmas function and he would be in his BDU pants, and you know, he had a whitetail on his sweatshirt. You know, that's who I was looking up to. I wanted to be a man when I was younger, and part of being a man and part of being an alpha was that you hunted and you provided game for your family. Hunting was not just something that you did for entertainment and fun. It was a way that people socialized. It was a way that people got together, and it was a way for people to enjoy their time when they got done from 40, 60, and 70-hour work weeks. And so the thing that's so important about this question is that the men that were in my life to mentor me, and the importance of my mother to clean game, and my grandmothers to understand game, being in the kitchen and preparing that for nutrition, it was just normal then. And there's so many people other than a mom or a dad that can be a mentor. And watching those movies, those VHS tapes and DVDs that we rented from the video store, you know, my screen time wasn't with an iPad. My screen time was learning what Night and Hail was releasing on video, and it was watching the Drury brothers grow up and build a business together. It was watching HS Strut travel across the country in their yellow and green trucks, and watching Will Primos and Toxie Hayes build what they have today to a legacy with not only just camouflage companies and game call companies, but those folks mentored me in just how to carry yourself. I mean, anybody that's ever been around or seen it, whether they know them or not, a Toxie Hayes or a Will Primos, I mean, those gentlemen carry themselves not only as businessmen, they carry themselves as conservationists, as Christians. You know, they're family men, and that's really important, especially in this outdoor industry now. And as we'll talk, as how social media has had an impact on all of this. Some of the greatest mentors that I had with my work through Cabela's and other companies that I've been an ambassador for and done work with, is some of the greatest mentors didn't teach me anything at all about the woods, woodsmanship, or how to be a long range shooter or turkey hunter or deer killer. They taught me how to be a father, and they taught me how to be a spouse, and they taught me how to do good at my work and always put my best foot forward. All of those people continuously mentored me through the industry and the profession to tell me that hunting and fishing would always be there once my family reached a certain age and once my career got to a certain point. And I can't thank those individuals enough.
No, I hear you. It's kind of a similar story with me. My father's really introduced me to the outdoors, and I met other people that taught me a lot of things along the way, and you know, was very important to me as well in my life and stuff. But one of the things that you said that I really admire about you and you can kind of go into some of the programs and or different things that you like to do. But you've been a tremendous mentor to kids, you know, teaching them a lot of life lessons and doing a lot of things. Kind of go over with some of the things that you try to help the kids in the community with.
Mentoring kids is a hard and challenging responsibility. It's rewarding. It's ever changing. The dynamics of family structure puts all of us as American males in a position to help raise our youth, both genders, male and female. Our young people need us. Our young people need us in so many different ways. And in my own local community over the years, and what I've done with my main profession and education is I learned very early on that there's a lot of children that lost their mothers and fathers because they fought and served this country to defend our Constitution. I learned that a lot of children suffer the loss of a parent at a young age, and they may not have a father or a mother that is able to take them out and hunt, or if their father or their mother does have the ability to take them to hunt because of their skill level, they may not, because maybe there's an ill parent or there's a schedule that they have to have for their work, and they put food on the table. And there's a lot of people that prioritize life to the level to where they may not be able to take their children hunting and fishing so much as what we may think would be, normal or a lot. And then I developed curriculum through my teaching to teach people how to be stewards of the land. All those things are so important, because even with the onset of urban sprawl, and we look at, they don't make any more land. We hear all these things, and it's kind of like a broken record. There's still the American dream for young people to have a family and to have a house and to eventually own their own piece of land. And, I get to teach children how to do that. And then once they become children, they become young adults. And over the years, I've got kids that are in full-time production agriculture to professional careers that don't revolve at all around agriculture, but they're landowners, and what they've learned from the experiences that they've had, whether that's planting natives or how to manage and stock their pond or how to produce a higher protein source or better habitat and cover on their property. I get to see the benefits of what I passed on to those young people. And it's so very important that we understand how important it is with young people to teach them common sense, but also to teach them confidence. Having a pocket knife in your hand and learning how to cut away from yourself is just as practical if you're teaching a kid how to whittle, or if you're teaching a kid how to open up a pack of bacon in the kitchen when they need a basic life skill as they develop. Teaching a kid how to mix the oil and the gas for a two-stroke engine, whether that's a chainsaw or a weed eater, that's something that's going to be really important, whether or not they're out there cutting down trees as a logger or trying to put in a road in a farm to have access to it with a better infrastructure, or they're doing it in their backyard. And then to bring just into consideration what kids are doing with a safety and a trigger, with the firearm. We look at it as such a bad thing in today's modern world, but look at all of the different types of tools that you use that have a trigger. Like, let's say, for example, a kid wants to use an air gun. Well, guess what? It needs to be pointed in a safe direction. It needs to be handled in a safe way, and it's got a trigger, and you don't put your finger on it till you're ready to use it. So the application to young children, Paul, has been to just teach them a way of life, whether that's with their career or they're just going to shoot some trap or skeet, whether they're learning how to ride an ATV or a four-wheeler in a safe manner. It's crazy, but in this day and time, you would be amazed if you haven't been around young people lately. We have a whole lot of young people that are superior individuals, but we have a whole lot of kids that are afraid to jump on a tractor, jump on a four-wheeler, and they don't have confidence, and they've never had the support. And one of the things that me and my coworker come up with a long time ago is that kids truly need an environment to be able to fail, but they need to be able to fail in a manner in which they feel safe, and they need to be able to fail in an environment in which they can learn from it and know that you're there not only to provide them love and care, but to provide them something that's going to be valuable to them for the rest of their life. If you don't mentor young people and show them what they're going to apply to their life or when they're going to apply it, then basically you're just hoping that young people turn out well. And hoping's not going to get us very far. And it takes doing, and it takes putting that structure around young people to allow them to face challenges so that eventually one day they can be self-sufficient and do it on their own.
So, I mean, you brought up a bunch of awesome points there and basically hit on, the importance of getting kids in the outdoors. And, the outdoors and hunting is more than just going out and, killing a deer or killing a turkey or, whatever. It's more of trying to teach kids basically how to be confident and do things for themselves. And I mean, there's just so much more to getting a kid into the outdoors than what most people think. And I mean, with that being said, I mean, I'm sure you've taken your kids deer hunting, and with the time of the year that we're doing this, I mean, turkeys right on the forefront of my mind. Have you taken your kids turkey hunting yet this year?
I've taken a lot of kids turkey hunting over the years. I've taken a lot of people in mentor situations, turkey, ducks, deer, coyotes, everything. And this year, I can tell you that I have had to make a decision that was really important. And besides talking about all the kids out there, all the youth or people that I mentor, I want to share something about what's happening to this season when this gets released, and even the next couple of weekends. What's important to talk about. Our Kentucky youth season for 2025 was a complete washout. I've had some really personal things in my health come up over the years that may put this in perspective. And I've never opened up about this, but I'm going to tonight. When I was younger, I suffered a stroke, and it impacted my life in a very complicated way. And I have pushed through that and battled that ever since the day that it happened. And one of my biggest goals was to make sure that I didn't lose a spring turkey season over it. And I didn't. And I killed all my birds and traveled to all my states like normal. And then about a year later, I was sleeping in a tent over in Tennessee, and one of my closest friends in my life, Chad Morris, I woke up and we started the day basically, giving each other a hard time. I always give him a harder time than he gives me. And the next thing you know, I was having a TIA, and I went turkey hunting the next day because it was opening day of turkey season in Tennessee, and I killed my 4 turkeys that you could kill in Tennessee 4 days in a row right there. And I kind of jumped off in the weeds a little bit with getting to this, but I want to tell you about the youth and why it's important. My daughter and I talk about turkey hunting and deer hunting and everything else all the time. And my students that I have, we're always back and forth with scouting reports, and we're always talking to each other about what the bird numbers are doing or how the deer are acting. And my daughter said something to me that let me know as a mentor and just as a father this year that I did something right, because that rain that I talked about in western Kentucky and southern Indiana, we had almost 15 inches of rain. We had epic floods that have not occurred and greater in areas than the 1937 flood. We've had water up over thousands of acres. We've had routes that would normally take 5 minutes that now take people 20 minutes, and some routes that normally take 20 minutes, an hour and a half. And we've had endless miles of routes that can't even be taken even by boat because of of everything that goes on. So what does it mean to mentor young people and take them to the woods? It's teaching them about how to process their game and how to scout, not just how to shoot something and tag it. But my daughter said something to me with the weather, and she said, Dad, I want to go and I will go. And she also brought up that she respected the hunt enough that she would rather wait till the weather got better and the hunting conditions were better. And it wasn't because she was afraid to go out in the rain and get wet. It wasn't because we weren't willing to put up a blind and stay dry. But it was the point that I realized that my own child had enough respect for the wild turkey to not go out and shoot a turkey. And anybody that's diehard about turkey hunting like we are, you know that there's really no other way to describe a soaking wet turkey other than a wet rat. And she was like, Dad, it's not even going to be good for a picture. And a picture's not everything, but it meant a lot to me, Cameron, that she had the ability to process through the quality of the hunt that she was going to have. And these younger kids that go through the hunt, it is as rewarding as anything to hear them come up and share their stories with me, or kids that I take that are or other people who they have to be just kids. Being a mentor is somewhat a misunderstood topic, because there's a lot of people that need to be mentored and they're our age or older, or they may need to be just mentored in a different species. But just to see people be grateful for the game that they put on their table, or to see people be mentored when they make their own first batch of summer sausage or their own first batch of jerky, or they just learn how to cook game, or they actually go out and have their first successful hunt on their own, or they do their first backcountry trip, or they go to their first out-of-state hunt. I mean, that mentoring is, man, it's such an awesome topic to talk about, because we have painted on the canvas mentoring and mentorship so wrong for so many years, because we all think that mentoring is about taking only your son or your daughter or your grandson or your granddaughter and taking them out, setting them in a blind and resting their firearm up on some type of rest and having an exclusive spot for them that puts them at a high chance of killing game. And I'll tell you this, if anybody wants to learn anything about mentoring and learn the mistakes, go and put a young person or a new hunter into a situation where their first few times out, they have nothing but success and above average success. And I can promise you this, more times than not, I can prove to you that those people aren't going to be in it long term, and it's not very sustainable for the health of the overall hunting.
Oh, I agree with you there. For sure. You take somebody and they've never been, I mean, it's like the joke you see, like you'll see a kid during rifle season, when deer season comes around, and they just kill an absolute giant. And then, 3, 4, 5 years goes down the road, and they don't understand that the deer that they were, blessed to harvest was, I mean, one in a million, so to speak. And then they see all these, smaller deer, or they may not see another deer for, however long. And it just like, it almost ruins them, because they think that, all hunting is essentially killing. And that's not what it is.
And listen, over time, it has been an honor to have people recognize what I've done for so long, but there's so many good people out there. But I want for the listeners to understand something. I don't walk through the woods, and I don't walk down the trail, and I don't go out to the field and grab a fistful of dirt and just think that everything is perfect. In my head all the time, I'm thinking, do they know how to set up a tree stand safely? Do they know how to field dress a deer? Do they know how to condition their turkey call? Do they know how to mount their optic? Do they know how to clean their firearm? Do they know how to sharpen their knife? There's all these do's, and I'm telling you, I go back all the time and talk to my closest friends, because while I had a lot of mentors, I was a very self-taught person. I mean, exclusively self-taught in a lot of ways, because it goes back to what I said about my grandfather and my dad. They didn't have deer. They didn't have turkeys to hunt when I was getting into hunting. Those were species that were somewhat pretty much new. Like I was teaching my dad. I was deer hunting before my dad. I was definitely turkey hunting before my dad and my grandpa. But they got into doing it. But small game was their thing, and I think about that all the time. Do kids know a shagbark hickory from a pignut hickory? Do they understand why they're going to put down lime to increase the pH? Are they understanding what the planting depth is of this seed? Do they understand why they need to take a soil test, or why they need to cut their timber? Do they even understand what they need to know about putting permethrin on their clothing to make sure that they don't get alpha-gal or some type of tick-borne illness? And do they know how to put their equipment up for the season and make sure that it's not getting moldy and mildewed? And then, do they know how to maintain a vehicle to keep it on the road so that they don't break down? And can they make a campsite reservation? Do they know how to be legal in another state when it comes to get their hunting license or their conservation stamp? I mean, if you ever think about what it takes to mentor somebody to be a all around and all season hunter and angler and conservationist, land manager, man, you better have the backup and the storage that Apple uses, and whatever that special cloud is that all of us are so dependent on to back stuff up. Because both of you, think about this. Think about how much stuff we have to pass on to young people in order to do what we do for so many different species and so many different types of outdoor recreation activities.
Oh, I mean, I was sitting here thinking about why you hit on, you did have some mentors growing up, but in a lot of ways you were also self-taught, and that like struck a chord with me, because I mean, I had, my uncle and my cousin. That's really who got me into hunting. They took me. I mean, I don't even remember how old I was, but I mean, they took me, as much as they could whenever I was a kid. But in middle school, I want to say it's my 6th grade year. Me and my dad were involved in a really bad car accident that ended up breaking my dad's back in like 2 or 3 different places. And I mean, he hunted some growing up, but like, once that happened, it's just ever since then he's not been the same. He can't get around. And as I got older, I just I fell in love with hunting and wanted to go as much as I could, but I didn't have somebody to teach me. And the more you talk, I mean, the more kind of nervous I get, because I'm getting at the age now where, hopefully me and my wife are able to have kids someday. And man, I'm just nervous. I mean, I hope I can teach my kids and be a mentor for them. And heck, I might have to give you some calls later on.
You can, and coming full circle on all this mentoring. Paul talked about, our relationship and what we've done with each other over the years as far as projects and different things. These mentors, which will be us one day as we put more silver in our hair and gray on our face, and as our bones and our bodies begin to break down, this mentoring thing is really, really important. And I'm seeing full circle too that people like my father and my grandfather who have passed now and they're not in my life. I mean, I've seen them in the peak of their physical condition, but I also seen them at the weakest part of their life physically, to where weather, terrain, just the efforts and strengths that they needed to go afield, or the energy that they needed to keep a farm up or to make a weekend of a hunt. I seen where it took them out of the game, and I had to change. So don't think for 1 minute that mentoring is not going to reward you someday, because I've seen things in so many different ways. And if you're out there listening and you've mentored and your physical health and everything is still good right now, I'm just going to say it. I think that these people are going to remember us one day. And I think there is going to be a point in a time where we're going to need assistance. And it may not be how to sight in our rifle or how to dial in, our turkey gun to get it patterned or what have you. But there's going to be a day where these folks give back to us, just like I gave back to my grandfather and my father and other people that impacted me. Mentoring starts off at one level of a relationship, but by the time that it's done, it's that young kid that somebody took hunting that's going to eventually take that old man or that old woman hunting, and eventually we're gonna send them off and hopefully go to a life that we all believe in as far as Christianity, that will provide to us, very great rewards and great things. But this mentoring thing, I think, is a huge, huge, huge thing that we need to really take and consider when it comes to how do we get people active in hunting, how do we keep people active in hunting, and how do we keep people hunting not only when they're young, but when they get older and they face their battles.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's you got to do what you got to do, and I try everything in the world that I can to help the youth that we have, whether it's through our NWTF chapter or other things to show them what to do. So it's definitely important and stuff. But to shift gears a little bit, wanted to move ahead on a question that I had in our outline that I know is important to you is talk about some of the issues and the research that not only have you done, but kind of some of the research that's been done out there to try to help improve the wild turkey here and what problems they seem to be having.
Well, turkey research is very much needed right now. Issues that are going on with turkeys. Uh, let's talk about the commercial side of it and the innovation side of it first. TSS allows for us to shoot turkeys at a further distance than we've ever been able to take them before. I'm a user of TSS, but let's not look at it like our shotgun shells aren't killing more turkeys, because they are. We're better predators. I mean, we have better equipment. We have Chasing 49, where the turkey has got a much bigger dollar sign on its head. And we have social media that is teaching people things in a good way, but it's also getting more people involved. And I've got a lot of work behind the scenes with the modern social media and influencers of the industry, but we also don't ever really bring up the fact that they're doing a lot of good, but there also has been some things that have come from that good that we're all struggling with. And that is, there's more people on our public lands. There's more people leasing our private lands. There's a lot of things there that have impacted people. We have decoys that turkeys will run 400 yards across the wide open field to, and we've got a style of using decoys where a 250-pound man again can crawl behind it if it's legal in that state and do something called reaping, where a lot of us that started turkey hunting years ago knew that a turkey could see our eyes blink, and still to this day there's turkeys that can see you barely move, or just their 6 sense knows that you're there against that tree no matter what camouflage you're melted into the terrain on. But then you have a decoy that you can hide behind, and you got people on television showing this fast-paced technique, and you've got optics and red dots that are allowing us to shoot farther and tighter chokes, and all of those things are impacting turkeys. Don't think that they're not. We're harvesting a lot of turkeys because we have a lot of awesome gear. um, we don't talk about that a whole lot because that's part of the Pittman Robinson money, and it kind of gets into ethics, and it gets into some really controversial things with our commissions and DNRs and state game agencies. But there are going to be things that we're all going to have to take in consideration, whether or not people think that disease or parasites or predators are impacting the turkeys, because all of us have seen these things. There's definitely parasites impacting turkeys. I mean, there's birds that you pick up and after you've harvested them, you pick them up and you can tell they only weigh 14 or 15 pounds and they're a long beard. And it's not because they've strutted all season, or it's not because it's at the tail end of the season. It's because the fact that you actually process your game birds, or you put them in the back of the truck and you realize as that body and that carcass begins to cool down, that you can see, through the process of that bird going through, being harvested, that, parasites are leaving its body, or you realize that, hey, there's some type of issue going on with the dermatology of their skin, and we're having to take samples. And we're seeing where, with research, and especially research that I do, and the amount of time, 7 days a week, that I'm out in the field, not just reading about it, truly there. I mean, there are raccoon tracks everywhere. There's possum tracks everywhere. We're starting to hear more folks talk about the armadillo. We all know that coyotes are getting to be much more aggressive. We know that the coyotes are getting to be in much greater numbers. The bobcat is always a big talk when it comes to being such a dominant and predominant predator towards turkeys and what they can do. But the research that I have, whether people need a university study or a PhD, it really doesn't matter. Some of the best research that we have is hunters that are in the field that are trying to talk to these biologists and trying to talk to some of these game agencies. And probably one of the biggest problems that I think we have was early on is they didn't listen. And here we are. And so it really is time for folks to look at and understand that, yes, there are trail camera studies out there that I'm involved with, where we're putting trail cameras on these hens that are nesting, where they're trying to incubate their eggs, and coyotes are hunting and killing these hens at night sitting on the nest. It doesn't take a PhD or a grant to prove by a picture. Just like I send you, Paul, I mean, these are whole birds being carried in a coyote's mouth. We didn't understand coyotes like we do now, or maybe we don't understand them now like we need to, because back during all of this time, when such a great effort and such a great accomplishment on behalf of the NWTF and all the volunteers and agencies that were restocking turkeys on the landscape, we were focused on habitat, we were focused on predators, we were focused on when to start the season and when to close the season. But we don't see a lot of people picking up their tools as much as we should when it comes to developing habitat and killing some of these predators or trapping these predators. We need people to have just as much energy to trap and hunt predators and to do habitat improvement work as they do to get up and put their favorite camouflage on, throw their vest on, and put their gun over their shoulder and go yelp up a big old hardwoods gobbling eastern turkey. I mean, there is no doubt turkey hunting in the Southeast is where its heritage and its culture is. You don't see a lot of people from Colorado and Wyoming and Montana coming here to kill our turkeys. But all of us in the Southeast are traveling all around this country and into other countries to kill turkeys. And I'm not sure we're doing a really good job of developing and improving habitat. I don't think a lot of us have showed up at the gate to do work as much as we've showed up at the gate on opening day to go try to put a tag on a turkey's leg. And we've got to change that. But there's a lot of positive things that are happening. We're starting to see where fire on the landscape and people doing prescribed burn on private properties, and where more public pieces of property are now being burned by organizations like the NWTF and other volunteers that are trying to get their members together to go out and to help bring a positive influence into what's going to make a positive influence on not only just the turkeys, and it's going to make positive influence on the other game. And I think that's where we've got to go. We've got to put people on the same level playing field, that they realize that the ducks and the turkeys and the deer, they're all going to benefit from this habitat work. And we've got to pay attention to these things like these cicada hatches, and we've got to be involved with what we're using as far as our agriculture production practices, and why is it that other countries are not accepting GMO products, and why is it that other countries aren't accepting food products that certain chemicals are used with. I mean, I am not a tree hugger. I am a person who knows that this country is sick and dying of cancer. I know that we are sick and dying of lots of diseases. There's not a hospital in the country. It doesn't matter if we're in Indianapolis, Louisville, Nashville, wherever you want to go. There's not a hospital that's not full of patients each and every day without major issues. If we're sick as a human society, our common denominator is water and food. It's air. And I'm not out here to beat agriculture. I'm an agriculture education teacher. But I think that our own diet and our own health is showing that the turkeys aren't doing that well in certain places. Yes, they're thriving in other areas, but yeah, there's some things with our agricultural practices that we need to take in consideration. So you just asked me a question that's hard to answer, but I do know this much. I know that we can all argue over this chicken litter. We can all argue over whether or not we know what the answer is or we have a assumption. We can argue that every day, and our efforts aren't going to go anywhere arguing. Where our efforts need to be put into is learning how to burn, learning how to turn over the dirt, learning how to cut timber, learning how to focus on succession, understanding what habitat is needed for those little poke turkeys, understanding how important invertebrates are in their diet. And at the end of the day, stop showing up on public and private lands just to hunt. Show up and do something. Don't just show up to take. Give back more than you're taking. That's what we're supposed to do in our role as a hunter. We're supposed to be a tool in conservation. And if we all know that we have a species that is suffering, and it is, then we've got to do something more than just be a hunter. And you need to be a hunter that has a conservation side, a green thumb to you, whatever it is, and start doing some stuff and make not only these species sustainable, but make our sport sustainable and make the land that we utilize sustainable. I'm very passionate about that.
Man, I could go down a rabbit hole and we could literally talk about what I'm going to ask you for probably an entire podcast. You kind of circled back around and hit the nail on the head. I've got a really good buddy of mine. Think the world of him, and he's a little different. And I think because of the way he is, I don't think he's as big in the waterfowl industry as he should be. And we've talked a lot about what you just talked about. And before I ask you a couple questions, you would agree that the wildlife that we have, deer, turkey, duck, you name it, it's a resource, right?
It is a resource, and it should be a natural resource that we all understand how to manage, not just how to harvest.
Exactly. And I don't remember exactly how you said it or verbatim of the way you put it, but you were talking about how we're seeing all these people the chasing 49 and these YouTube videos and all the gear that we have now. We are a better predator, so to speak. But with all these videos and stuff on YouTube and everything you see, the people that didn't have someone to show them the right way to hunt, or basically how to respect the hunt and respect the animal, it's almost like it's a sense of just, it's all about the kill. And I've talked to my buddy, his name's Bryce Decker. He makes duck calls. Black River duck calls is his thing. But basically, we've talked a lot about how we hunt. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a big duck hunter. Okay, and I spend a lot of time with some absolutely phenomenal guys, people that I don't consider just friends, but like brothers, in the Arkansas timber on public land. And yes, I love turkeys, but I mean, gosh, duck hunting is my thing, and I love it. But you know, I've seen a lot of negativity, um, especially in the last couple of years, um, come about around duck hunting, and it's like I was saying, it's more about. It seems like it's more about the keel, and I want you to talk about just basically how important it is, because you hit on it. You said, if we're going out on public land or private land or whatever, it's just more. It's just as important to be a conservationist and care about the land and take care of the land, and basically, leave it better than you found it. But I want you to basically just, I want to hear your thoughts on of the importance of that, because I don't think a lot of people understand, especially, if they, like I was saying, if they didn't have someone to um, show them the right way of doing things, and showing them the importance of, it's not just about the kill, but it's about, conservation. But I just want you to hit on, the importance of leave the land better than you found it, because whether you're talking about turkey hunting, duck hunting, deer hunting, elk, whatever it is, it is a resource. And if we don't take care of it, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to pass it on to the people we love.
It's easy to answer. So it's complicated and it takes a lot of time, but the issue that we all have to admit is monetarily, game, wildlife is worth money to states. It's worth money with tourism. It's worth money in the industry, and it's what we spend our money on. So you have to give back more than you take. That's it. That's what people have to understand. You have to give back more than you can take. Everybody's looking for a good duck hunting spot. Folks can go over here and kill a deer. Folks can go over here and probably scratch out a turkey. Everybody has a spot they can go kill some squirrels or go rabbit hunting. Everybody's looking for a good duck spot. Now everybody's looking for a good turkey hunting spot, because you're trying to kill 49 turkeys across these states, and you're trying to do it as fast as you can. Not everyone, but it's to where the people are racing a clock with their work and their schedule and their family and their finances, and how many states can I hit? And I mean, it's a challenge. It's a good challenge. It's not bashing it. It's just the fact that we need to look at what's going on. But make this an important fact for folks to realize. We are the voice of conservation. We are the hunters and the anglers. Our dollars are what is funding conservation. That's very important. But we have to do more than just show up thinking that the game is going to be there. We have to manage the game, and we have to manage the landscape, and we have to manage the habitat, and we have to realize that there is a very important thing that is talked about in the hunting industry that we're going to bring up tonight. And I'm going to show a color of me that most people don't know about. People market that we have less hunters than we've ever had before. And that is the biggest lie that there is to make more money for the hunting industry. We have more hunters on the landscape than we ever have. Statistics don't lie, statisticians do. And what they do is they tell you that hunting numbers are down. They're at record lows. They are by percentage. The percentage of the population is down as far as what percentage of the population hunts. But what is up is the number in the population. And when you take the population today, in today's year, month and day, and you look at that as a math problem, and you look at the percentage that's hunting to the number that's the population in an area, there's more hunters on the landscape. But they play that statistic, we have less hunters than ever before, because everybody's chasing this grant money, Everybody's fighting over this and that. And make no mistake on this. Legislation, politics, and all this stuff. Land is an asset. It is valuable. People want to own public land. We're always going to have to fight for because somebody's going to try to develop it. Just think about it. If your national parks went for sale, what price would they bring? Thank God that they're protected. Okay. Thank God that a lot of our WMAs are protected. And thank God that us as hunters, a lot of us are very vocal. We're very good people, but we are very aggressive and we are very authoritative when it comes to standing our ground for fighting for our rights to hunt and fish. That is important that folks realize that. And all of this ties back. Hunting and fishing, we don't need it to go away. If we lose hunters and anglers because the game is not there, we also lose our voice because they go on and do something else. They play more baseball. They play more soccer. They race go-karts. They ride ATVs. Like, we need to keep our game populations healthy, not just for us to fill our tags on, but we have to keep the enthusiasm and we have to keep the purpose and the reason to go out there. I mean, we're all smart enough to know that if game is not there, we go somewhere else. Well, we don't want that to continue for very long. So whether it's overhunting, a sickness, an illness, habitat loss, whatever, look at the big picture. If game's not there and people aren't partaking in the sport, then we create less revenue. And people need to understand that resident versus non-resident money and how Pittman Robinson dollars, PR dollars work. Don't you think for 1 second that this ain't millions of dollars that's being negotiated, and behind closed doors and behind all of these, political decisions and legislation and bills and acts and all of these things that we vote on. I, Cameron, am focused on the habitat and the land and the heritage and the culture. I am not worried about the buck. The buck that I want to manage is the one that has antlers on it and he has a tail and a hoof. The buck that I want to manage is not the one that draws interest or it's deposited into a bank. We're going to have to do another podcast on a different subject because you're hidden on something and everybody knows it, that we all want a place to hunt and fish, and it's harder and harder. That's why people like Paul are so important. That's why Hart County Realty and Mossy Oak Properties is so important. They're trying to, look at keeping a piece of land in someone's family so they got a place to hunt and fish, because I'm telling you right now, in all respect to Paul and all respect to Mossy Oak Properties, I've been in places that sell bologna and cheese sandwiches with salad dressing, and you can get them dressed. A lot of people don't like it when Paul's signs or a Mossy Oak Property sign goes up in their community. They don't like it when land starts getting sold, or land has just as much as a value now for hunting and fishing, and for someone to have their peace in mind and to be outside in the habitat in God's world as production, agriculture, or real estate development.
And you just kind of hit on something else, and I mean, I'll let Paul kind of take over because we could go down a rabbit hole, but I will say this, I love my job. I love working for Mossy Oak Properties. There's literally not a thing else in the world that I'd rather do. I mean, I literally, I thank God every day, honest to gosh, that I get to do what I do because I thoroughly enjoy it. But the one thing that I don't like about my job is what you were just saying. I go out and put a sign on a piece of property that's, let's just say 50 acres. In the back of my mind, I'm hoping that somebody is looking at that 50 acres and being like, man, that'd be an awesome startup farm for me to be able to take my kid out, go turkey hunting, go deer hunting, go squirrel hunting, whatever it may be. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, gosh, please do not make this a subdivision. Please don't put it, please don't put multiple houses on it. You know what I'm saying?
Cameron, we all had the opportunity to buy $800, $400, $1,200 an acre of land. And we've all heard that was just a piece of dirt that was holding the world together. But we've realized something. Not everybody likes to hunt and fish. Not everybody's even going to hunt and fish. But I've never met anybody that doesn't like, even a big real estate developer or whatever. Most of the time, those people go on vacation where it's very peaceful. You ever put this all together? That's why the mountains and the streams and the lakes, that's why they're all so powerful. people get away from development and they go to these outdoor environments to get away from the hustle and bustle. But it's our responsibility to admit as hunters and as anglers that if we want a place to hunt and fish, it's probably going to be really important that we advocate and help fight and support our game agencies to keep our public lands managed and open and funded. It's probably important to at least get active in seeing, what is the resident versus non-resident use on these pieces of properties. And everybody's welcome to go to commission meetings and write their politicians and to get involved and come together in conservation groups, whether it's NWTF or a local conservation club that you just kind of work together. But land has more values than just a neighborhood, and land has more uses than just hunting and fishing on, because we've all lost ground. We've all lost ground that we hunt and fish on because someone passes away or someone decides to sell a farm, or, it's developed into something other than a piece of dirt for us just to hunt and fish on for free. Nothing's free. And we've got to take in consideration that if we're going to start talking about tactics and techniques here in just a little bit on killing turkeys and sub-gauge shotguns and, all that, we also got to realize there's going to be a tactic that you're going to have to find a place to hunt. And that's shaking hands, and that's going to public land, and that's going to an outfitter, and that's buying your own property. It's as diverse and it's as complicated as that question we had earlier in the program about what it takes to be a mentor. What does it take to be a hunter? What's it take to keep a good hunting spot? That's a 7-8 hour podcast, but no one would listen to it except for those that are truly diehard, that have had to fight, manage, and battle keeping a place to hunt and fish on for the last 20 or 30 years of their life. And I'm one of those guys. It does not come easy.
I 100% agree with you on that. One of the things Cameron touched on that I'll say that's important to me, I love it when I go out and I introduce people to that outdoor lifestyle. That is definitely something that draws to me. It works on my heartstrings, and that's what I'm always hoping, that their goal is to live that outdoor lifestyle. And I love it when they do it. One of the questions that I would have, if you're talking to somebody and you only had 2 or 3 things that you could tell them, okay, I want you guys to help the outdoors. I want to help the outdoors. If you could only give 3 options of how they could help the outdoors, what would be your top 3 recommendations?
My top 3 recommendations on how to help the outdoors, number 1 would be to understand how to manage habitat and pressure. We're starting to realize now that food, water, shelter, space, water, whatever it is so important to those key components of habitat. But we're also starting to realize how important pressure is, because pressure can keep animals out of good habitat. So I think pressure is the major thing that folks need to manage and tweak that with habitat management. That's number 1. Number 2 is do not focus on the gear. Do not focus on the name brand of what you're using. Focus on woodsmanship. Understand that you need to know these critters. You need to know all the critters, even the ones that you aren't hunting, because certain critters will tell you certain things. If certain critters are in the area, it may tell you that certain other critters that you want aren't going to be in the area, or how a certain critter sounds off or gives an alarm may let you know that it's time to stand up out of your tree stand or maybe start looking a different way. So learn Mother Nature. Don't go in and think that it's all about the special blend of food plot seed, or it's all about this X, Y, or B brand of product that you're using. That's very, very, very important. And then the last one is going to go out there for the males. And this is something that I learned working in retail training and research leadership several years ago, that I'm very proud of, that I recognize this. And that is that for whatever reason, us as males are afraid to learn or admit we don't know how to do something, or we don't know the answer to something around other people. you're going to have to realize that if you're 45 years old or 50 years old or 26 years old and you don't know how to run a chainsaw or hook up a 3-point hitch, or you don't know how to turn a piece of dirt or plant a tree or calibrate a sprayer, run a herbicide, if you don't know how to wire something up with electricity or turn a wrench, the sooner that you admit to somebody you don't know how to do it and ask for help to learn how to do it, the better off you're going to be. Why we walk through life with such a macho man attitude, I'll never know. But let your guard down a little bit. People are willing to help their fellow brothers and sisters. But as far as the males out there, just calm down just a little bit and go back to learning, and accept the fact that learning does not stop. Continue to learn and continue to ask for help, and surround yourself with good people. If you'll do those 3 things, I guarantee you, not only will habitat and your hunting get better, life will get better in general.
So, Scott, my thing is, Paul asked, I guess your 3 main ways or ideas that you think we could help. My thing is I'm wanting to get into filming hunts, but I don't want to be another, I don't even know how to put it, another face on YouTube, because I feel like filming hunts has almost made more of a negative impact on hunting than that it has a positive impact. And maybe you feel different, I don't know, but I pretty much would stand on that hill till the day I die unless something changes. And my question to you is, I've bought a camera. I'm waiting on a few more things to really be able to do it the way I want to. But I have ideas in the back of my head and ways that I want to be different. And I can share those and, ask you what you think about those if you want me to. But really, I kind of want to hear your thoughts. Like, I've never released any type of videos as far as hunting's concerned. But I want to know your thoughts on, like, ways that I could be different and make a positive impact, because just like what we talked about a few minutes ago, yes, there is some positive that's happening, but a lot of it's negative, and I want to be a positive lot.
Be an advocator, be positive. Don't worry about the profit part. I mean, there's a lot of really good YouTube producers. Let's just use YouTube now because that's where everybody's going. There's a lot of really, really good, high quality stuff, really educational stuff. And sometimes those channels will only get 520 views for a video, where somebody else may have thousands of views within the first few hours that it's posted. Likes and subscriptions, sponsorships, and all that stuff, that's the monetary value. People are turning to YouTube. It's no different than how you would rebuild a carburetor on a chainsaw, or how you would change out a belt or a line on your truck if you wanted to try to do it on your own. People turn to that as an educational resource. And you may laugh at this, but I've said for the last 4 or 5 years now, kids don't have grandpas, they have YouTube, and kids don't have dads, they have YouTube. And there's so much truth in that. But follow your dreams, do what makes you happy. And people, it doesn't matter if you're doing it for the right reason. You would probably love to see 24,000 people watch your video within the first hour that it's released. But if only 24 people watch it within the first year that's released, if you help 24 people, Cameron, and that's 24 people that you've had an impact on, and you did it to help educate them and bring forward the positive light of hunting or fishing or conservation or habitat work or land management, or even just purchasing a farm. And that's what your goal and your purpose is. And if your goal and your purpose is to help other people, then the financial part of it is not going to be priority or objective number one. And I think all of us, without naming any names, know a lot of folks that have social media channels that maybe started off with promoting certain things, or had a certain objective, or at least some type of direction in what they were going. And we've watched them become commercialized, or become too dependent on sponsorship, or too depending on product pimping, and that's a big turnoff to some folks. But when people do buy that equipment and they dedicate their life, and a lot of folks will leave their jobs and their careers to do these things, they've got to keep the lights on, they got to keep food on their table. And I think some of the best YouTubers you'll find, and the ones that will be able to mentor you, will be the ones that flat come to you and tell you that they are a business person. This is a business. It's run like a business, and our business is to inform and educate people. And they have the perfect balance. If you want to, someone's going to say, well, nothing's perfect. But the ones that go into it and know that they're running a business, it's there to fund not only their life, but other people's lives, especially as these channels grow, do it and keep up with the technology and, get a good accountant, because it's like anything else. I mean, you're going to have expenses and you're going to have income, and you can work on it and have slow growth. To me, videotaping and filming all that stuff's going to be no different than as a hunter. You're just going to grow in time. And some things we have in our hunting arsenal, it's hard for us to throw away because we have a lot of memories, but we know they're outdated and not as good. And some things are oldies but goodies, and we would never get rid of them for anything. But you're eventually going to admit that videotaping is no different than being a real estate agent or being a hunter or fisherman. You're going to have to adapt, change, be innovative, and realize what's going on. And at the end of the day, you may have the greatest ideas on how to be the best YouTuber, and I may have the greatest ideas on how to be the best, prototype tester or school teacher. But if we don't understand our customers or we don't understand our audience, we're not going to have any success. So always be open to ideas and always be willing to listen to what advice other people give you. And constructive criticism a lot of times will hurt your feelings. And a lot of times when we try to start things and do things, most people aren't going to understand what maybe takes us 30 seconds or 3 minutes or 30 minutes to do. Some people aren't going to realize that's years worth of sweat equity and time, energy, and effort and sacrifice. As far as a financial living, there are very, very, very few people that do it. And there's a whole lot of people that love to hunt and fish. And I'll close on this in reference to the YouTube. There's a whole lot of hunting and fishing shows, outdoor recreation shows that you can go around to. And there's people that are standing in booths that are acting like they're making a living representing this company or that company or this product or that product, when they're really losing money, and they've taken time off from their real job so that they can go work at one of these sporting goods event stores, or they can go work in an outdoor show for a free t-shirt, a free hat, and a sticker to put on their truck, because for whatever reason, their arrogance and their ego, when they go back to their hometown, people think that they're truly in the outdoor industry. That's ruined a whole lot of things. And there's certain channels on television, I think, that went away over the years because of all of that quote unquote influencer stuff that really people just got completely burnt out on. Teach woodsmanship, teach conservation. I'll watch what you can produce and put out.
Yeah, it's one of the things. Me and Cameron was out on a farm that we had listed and shooting some videos, and we talked, and then we got to talking about editing and different things. And the one things I've always said and found is be willing to let your guard down and just be you. And if it turns out to be great, that's awesome. But you're going to learn along the way, and you're always going to get better at developing, editing, and putting a better product out there. And I think that's what people want to be. They want to see people be real and who they are, and they want to grow with you just like you do on your channels. So to me, as I've always said, just be you. That's one of the most important things. Just be you.
So, Scott, I could care less, about how many likes I got or how many followers I got or anything like that. Like Paul was saying, you got to let your guard down because it's got to be fun. You got to enjoy it. And my biggest thing is like, I want to get into filming hunts, just not only because it's just a huge passion of mine, especially duck hunting, but I want to be a voice that promotes positivity instead of, hey, we just shot a 10-minute limit of ducks by 7:30. This is the best hunt I've ever had. Like, why not show, what work, it takes to have hunts like that, or, um, what things you got to do to do it the right way, or, you could go on and on. But, I mean, my biggest thing is I just want to be a positive impact, because I see hunting as a whole, um, showing more negativity instead of positivity, or negative. I see hunting being shown more in a negative light than I do a positive light. And like I said, I can care less about how many views I get or whatever. Um, I just want to make a difference. It'd be awesome to be able to film these turkey hunts, and be able to say, like, hey, this video is sponsored by Woodhaven Custom Calls, or whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, if it's just me and my trumpet call, or me and my roost record call that I've used for years, I mean, it is what it is. I just want to be a positive impact and show people that it's more about just being able to post a picture on Instagram or Facebook and saying, hey, look at this bird that I killed. Like, it means so much more to me than that.
I'll make it short and sweet for you. People are drawn to good people, and people are drawn to good content. If people find a good person, whether that's virtually on YouTube or radio or a podcast, and they find good content and it's making them a better person, that makes them feel better, they're seeing more success in the field, then it's it's an easy bridge to gap, because that's what you're doing. You're serving your audience, and maybe they may not see the struggles and the time that you're putting into it, but if you're delivering what they're looking for, then that's great. And the other part about it is too, since we're on the social media world of things, I'm not going to disclose this person's name, but I would hands down tell you he is a extraordinarily good friend of mine, and I feel that he is the legendary person in the YouTube world and the channel and what he created. We were standing in the middle of a NWTF convention a couple of years ago, and we were talking like we always do about life and everything else, and then we kind of got quote unquote talking about business or viewership, and he said, no, it's at TikTok. It's at TikTok. And everything. We're going to have to start making more short stuff at TikTok's really. And now look where TikTok's at. I mean, so if a young person or someone's out there trying to do stuff, maybe that short and sweet answer and maybe that short and sweet video may be a good spot to get in the door, because people want stuff fast and they want it right now. And they may not read the whole book, but they want the clip notes and the summary of the end real quick. And that's just society. It goes back to, you got to know your customer, you got to know your audience.
Get into a little bit of turkey hunting, and guns and calls, and things that you take into the woods, maybe some tactics. So I was going to go over a scenario I had this evening and kind of get, pick your brain, see what you do, so on and so forth.
Yeah, start off with the basic turkey stuff. Maybe let Paul start off on something basic, and then we'll get into more aggressive and more detailed stuff.
Well, one of the things that
All right.
I'm in a unique situation with, where I had some health issues, so I've had to kind of change a little bit how I hunt. But what's your thoughts? You hear so much more about people taking 410s out and using 28 gauges and dropping down to the 20 gauges. Kind of what's your thought in that whole process and what everybody's doing? What's the goods and the bads about it?
Being very active in the conservation hunting world and the industry, several years ago, myself and other individuals had to start putting shirts and ties on and standing in front of boards of people that made legislative decisions, a lot of behind the scenes incognito type work. Ammunition representatives, folks of the medical field looking at the ballistics and energy, the trauma that is caused from lead and TSS shot, bismuth, all of these things have all come to play. But TSS now has brought the sub-gauge guns where they are, and it has allowed a tremendous amount of youth to go to the field and to effectively and ethically kill their game at distances that are equal to a 12 gauge of the lead era. And it takes time. You have to know your weapon. You have to know your firearm. You have to know your ammunition, your choke, your optics. You have to do all your stuff to get within range of these critters that you're hunting. But it's not just the youth that are benefiting from it. It is individuals that maybe have some fragile bones, shoulder surgeries. I've hunted with people that have chemo ports. I've hunted with soldiers that have to adapt due to war battle wounds and trauma in which they have partaken in their life. The amount of mountains and terrain that you go over, the weight of the guns, all of these things are great. Points to the sub-gauge deal. I've been sub-gauging it before sub-gauging was really known about. I was not loading my own TSS back in the day, but I had friends that loaded it for me. I learned early on in the 20 gauge world and was known for a very long time of hunting with TSS hand loads, and Federal had a loadout that was known as heavyweight, which was 15 versus the 18 as far as the weight of each individual pellet, and it was a good run. And now here we are, and you've got more than just hand loaders that are putting this stuff together. But the 28 gauge and the 410 are phenomenal. I mean, we had 2 days of Kentucky turkey season this past weekend with the opener, and I killed a bird with a sub gauge on Saturday, and I killed a bird with a sub gauge on Sunday, and I'm tagged out, and I don't worry about the distance of my turkeys being, whether or not I can kill them way out there, because I don't want to kill them way out there. But my daughter's got a 28 gauge, tactical turkey Mossberg that is phenomenal. And I packed a Benelli for years and still do. I'm working with Benelli right now with the Infinity Special Turkey Edition. I mean, I don't have to wear a hat and just show up with a billboard saying, hey, I'm just shooting Beretta, or I'm just shooting, Benelli or Franchi or Stoger or whatever it is. All I can do is advocate. And all of these gun manufacturers, and I mean all of them, from the big names to the little names, have done a great job with giving us lots of offerings and doing it pretty reasonable. So what do I think about it? I think if you don't own a 410, a 20 gauge, or a 28 gauge, you need to have at least one. And as far as I'm concerned, you may not be able to see me in person, but I'm anywhere from 235 pounds to 255 pounds throughout the year as my weight fluctuates. And I've handled a 12 gauge and still do at times, just because I have those guns to my disposal. But I really enjoy shooting a 410 and a 28 gauge and a 20 gauge that are loaded under pressures and with the components that don't make them kick like a 10 gauge. That's a subject for another day. But I enjoy being able to pull the trigger and not be afraid of it. I enjoy that my wife and my daughter and myself can all utilize the same firearm, and I am just blown away with how efficient TSS is on paper. And not that you have to just run TSS. There's a lot of really good loads out there. Even Winchester makes like a diamond plate 410 that's they recommend for 30 yards and in. I mean, it's just there. It goes back to our talks earlier in the program. What's impacting turkeys? We got better ammo. We got better guns. We've got better optics. And that's another key point. No matter what gauge people are shooting, point of aim and point of impact. Point of aim is where you're putting your bead on the turkey or your sight or the target. And the point of aim and point of impact are so important to talk about today, because if you're aiming at something and the gun's hitting high, low, left, or right, after you shim it and cast it, shim on the up and down, cast on the left and right, and you try a couple chokes and a couple shells, if that's not working, you can't take a gun back to the store and tell them you don't like it. I mean, you can ship it back to the manufacturer. Sometimes they can help you if it's not shooting in spec, but it puts us to another subject where you've got to go to that red dot and you've got to look at possibly an optic, and that allows you to bring your point of aim and point of impact together. And it's also easier for children and folks with aging eyes and the conditions and the tight spots that we get into. Yes, can optics fail? Absolutely. Can the batteries run out? Absolutely. But we can also miss a lot of game, and we can cripple a lot of game without taking ethical shots or just being human and making mistakes. And so these sub gauges between the shot components, the red dots and the chokes, I know everybody talks about it being a 40-yard game, but the truth of the matter is, if you have been around this stuff and you've tested this stuff and you really know what you're talking about, or you're just beginning to learn it, 50 and 60 yards is really the new range of most shotguns. And it's actually further than that as far as what those pellets can do and kill. And that brings up just a good point to close on, and that is, let's keep things ethical. Let's be sportsmen and women. Let's give the game a chance, and let's limit our range to not what could possibly happen, but what we should be doing. That's the difference between a wild animal and us as human beings, is that we should be able to cognitively put together our thought process and know that we're squeezing the trigger on a 410, 12 gauge, 20 gauge, 28 gauge, and what is a fair chase range for game, using the best firearms and the best components and the best accessories that is out there for us to buy.
Well, it's my situation, which is good to hear what you said about that. With the medical deal that I had, I've had to go from shooting left-handed to right-handed, and one of our buddies that was on the Indiana hunt with me helped me with the mount and to get it to where I can have that red dot up a little higher on the gun. But the 12 gauge now for me is a little bit too much, and I'm going to have to go down to that smaller gauge to allow me to feel more comfortable with it. And I'm glad to hear you and others think, that they're really doing a good job, and they're just as efficient, because that's something that's definitely going to be important to me moving forward in the turkey hunting world, for me, for sure. So
They're more efficient, and they're lighter. That's what's so beneficial to this hunting style. And it's prime time turkey, and it's going to be prime time turkey for me from now to the beginning of June. If I can shave 2 pounds or 2.5 pounds or 4 pounds off of what I have to carry to do my job efficiently, it's no different than a lineman or somebody else. If a surgeon has a better tool to use during an operation, or a lineman has a way to lighten his load going up the pole, and you can do the job as good or better with better equipment, it goes back to that adapting and making things better. And that really is where we're at. And the other part of it is too, I think that there's a pattern beyond what's just being put on paper, looking at a 12-inch circle. I do believe that there's a pattern right now, talking on this YouTube and social media and education. I'm glad that there's so much talk about the 410 and the 28 gauge and the sub gauges in general, because it's making everybody go back to the range and reevaluate their shell, look at their choke, look at where their gun's hitting and aiming. And a lot of folks have got this idea too, that just because you buy a shotgun or have a shotgun, if you buy an aftermarket choke, it's going to shoot better. That's not so much the case. TSS has to be choked up a little bit differently. We're learning now, even into this year, there's more talk amongst quote unquote the experts that ported chokes may be doing some things a little bit differently with TSS versus what ported chokes did with lead. And it's no surprise to anybody, over the last 4 or 5 years, the component part of building ammunition, rifle, shotgun, rimfire, whatever it is, folks had to get a little bit on the creative side. There was a shortage of ammo there for a while. Prices of ammo kind of went up. We're back at a good stage now where pricing is at least a little bit more on the consumer side. But I kid you not, this component side of things is still an issue. It's very important, if you're going to shoot a 410, 28 gauge, whatever these sub gauge guns are, I cannot stress to you enough how important it is to buy your ammunition from a company or a person, a business that you can pick the phone up, dial the number that's listed on their website or their social media profile, and talk to the people that load the ammunition. Because if you do have a tweak or you have a question about nines versus eights or 8.5s versus, tens, those people will help you. It's great too on these sub gauges to work with these ammunition folks that are on the smaller scale, these hand loaders that have created a legal business of selling this custom ammunition. It's nice to be able to pick up the phone and call them up and get 2 or 3 shots of this and 2 or 3 shot sizes of that, and they load you 6, 7, 8 different shells. They'll send it to you in the mail, and you can try it and pattern it at the range versus, you just go into that old commercial retail ammunition. You've got to buy a box of 5, and you start getting in the ammunition prices today, especially at TSS, sub gauge or 12 gauge or whatever. You start buying 4 or 5 boxes of shells, you're in $250, $300. So it's simple business. Find somebody you can work with, pick up the phone, and not only save yourself a couple bucks, but get to the end of the race where you want to that much faster. And these guys know their shotgun shells. These guys and gals that are loading, and it doesn't matter if it's Apex or Foxtrot or Epic Shot Shell. It doesn't matter if it's Kinetic Gun Works. I mean, they're all great people, and they know their product, and they want you to be happy. So go back to doing business the old-fashioned way when it comes to TSS, in my opinion.
Well, you just hit on a really good point because I'm sure you've heard of Verdict Ammunition. I wanted to, support, somewhat local. I live in Ashland now, and Verdict is loaded out of Hazard, Kentucky. And I know it's, somewhat of a distance away from here, but it's still, Eastern Kentucky. And I wanted to support local. And the other day I was doing some pattern testing, pattern several different shells, Longbeard XRs and the lead and the 5 and 6 shot. And I did, of course, the Longbeard Longbeard TSS. And then I did the Verdict and Apex Green Leaf, and I think I even put a Federal Premium through my gun. And you're talking about supporting a company where you can go ahead and call somebody that loads that shell. And that's exactly what I did. I called the owner of Verdict Ammunition. And I told him, I was like, man, something's going on because I think I only had like 307 pellets in a 14-inch circle, and I'm shooting a 12 gauge, and we'll get into that here in just a second. But I was like, man, for TSS, for number 9 shot, I mean, especially out of a 12 gauge, I mean, you want 400 plus pellets in that 12, 13-inch circle.
Well, what folks need to realize about TSS is this. Ballistically, through the air, aerodynamics, the hardness of the shot, the buffering, the wad, the pressure supprimers, the hole that you use, the forcing cone, there are so many variables, okay? What folks have got to realize about turkey guns, lead, TSS, is that back in the day, folks would go out to the gun range and there would be 4 or 5 boxes of different shotgun shells, lead. Some of them were red, some of them were black, some of them were Winchester and Remington. There was the active shells, and of course, heavy shot come along, and then the whole TSS game come. But something that will help folks with TSS is this: when you take a choke, an aftermarket choke, especially an external choke, which is known to basically screw into the thread types, and it doesn't matter what thread you have, that makes your barrel actually longer, which is kind of contradicting of what makes a good turkey gun is a shorter barrel, in my opinion. But you're taking 2 pieces of pipe and you're trying to throw a whole bunch of shot or a really powerful load down the range, and you're hoping that it's all going to fly with harmonics and it gets along together. But there's a lot of chemistry in a shell. There's a lot of variables in a shotgun: forcing, cone, your choke. You've got different wads and different powders, buffered, non-buffered. You've got coated shot, size of shot, ported, unported chokes, and then you get into constriction. So if a person is trying to look at how to get their gun to pattern best, keep it simple first. A lot of these guns, for example, a 670, a 675, and a 12 gauge will do all that you need to do to kill most turkeys from 0 to 50 yards. And a 20 gauge, somewhere in that 575 to 580, 585, it's going to do really, really good at producing the same thing, 0 to 50 yards. 28 gauge, try to keep that choke in a 520 to 525, even a 530, just to keep everything friendly and happy. And then so on and so on. And don't get too wrapped up in this choke and brand shell and all that just yet. Just understand that TSS is going to fly differently downrange. It's going to react inside of the barrel differently than lead. It's going to penetrate differently. It's going to work and perform differently at different ranges than lead. There's just so many things folks have to consider. But here's what folks need to remember. You can take a good high brass game load of lead and kill all the turkeys you want. Most of the time, if you do your homework, pattern your shotgun 30 yards and in, no matter if it's a 410 or a 10 gauge. You need to take the time on the range and not make rocket science out of basic physics and basic skill. And that's just shooting something and hitting what you're aiming at. But if you do want to use the best product, the best component that's out there, then it probably is lead if you're wanting to count pellets. But do not forget that the greatest guns in the world that shoot 300 plus pellets in a 10 or 12 inch circle has a shot stream and a shot column. So when you shoot your turkey, and I've shot my fair share and been with friends that have shot their fair share of them, you may look at it on paper when you pattern at the range and think, man, that's going to take that turkey and just disintegrate the head. Well, it would, but that's a piece of paper. And on a real turkey, you got to remember those first few pellets that get to that turkey's head and the thousands of seconds, if you take things with a slow motion camera and realize it, dead is only so dead. That's why so many people argue this. And that shot stream and that shot column and how that shot is behaving and keeping it calm and understanding that it really is a psychological relationship between the shooter, the gun, the shell, the wad, the buffering, the choke, and all that variable is considered. We got to remember that everybody's wanting the same answer at the end of the equation. You can have all the variables you want, but we want a good pattern and we want a dead turkey, and just one. That's the other thing. Pattern your gun, know how that pattern is, and only take ethical shots when it's clear to take that shot. And don't forget the birds that are behind them and the birds that are to the left or the right, they're in harm's way too. And something that every person needs to know, and it's an important talking point, whether you want to make a joke about it or not. But we all hear about Mr. Green Pants. No matter where you go and where you hunt, you need to have a game warden's phone number, because you need to be prepared not only for someone trespassing or an accident, but you got to remember sometimes things don't go as planned. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of this and see a little bit more vocal stance from our law enforcement guys and gals of where they're getting more calls of multiple birds being killed with one shot as our patterns and our shot begin to get better and better. Because no doubt about it, whether it's a 9 or a 10 or an 8 or an 8.5 or this choke, that choke, this brand, that brand, TSS is more lethal than lead. And it's our responsibility not to have just a better firearm. We're going to have to start making better shots and start thinking a little bit differently when it comes to shooting this product, because the last thing that we want to do is break the law and over-harvest our turkeys that we're legally allowed to kill.
Before we go on to the next question, I want to hit on something, because we are talking about TSS. Can you shoot a bird with lead? Yes. Can you shoot a bird with a good target load? Yeah, I'm sure you could. But here's why I shoot TSS, and I'm sure you would agree. I like shooting TSS because I want as much pellets on target as I possibly can get. And I could care less about, I understand, it may look good on paper or whatever, but at the end of the day, my goal is to make as ethical as a kill as possible. And just because TSS has came out and it allows you to shoot birds at a longer distance doesn't mean that you should you should go out there and shoot a turkey as soon as it hits 60 yards. I mean, heck, some of them will shoot turkeys at 80 yards. I mean, I've seen it, but just because it can, don't mean you should.
That's right. And the primary reason why I shot TSS and still do, my primary gun that people know me for is that Benelli M2 20 gauge. It allowed me to take 2 pounds off my firearm. It allowed me to have less recoil. It allowed me to have just as effective a range as a 12 gauge with lead shot. And in the end, basically, I was able to benefit as a hunter in the strains and the stress and the weight, whatever that I had to deal with my traveling or with, going up and down this ridge or that ridge. And the benefit is that less recoil, that less weight, it just shines. So everybody does everything for a different reason. But if you haven't experimented with it yet, just remember, you can let that 410, 28 gauge, 20 gauge, it will perform, a lot better than what a lot of folks were just used to them doing back in the days when lead was our only option.
I want to go over my hunt this afternoon, and just because of the turkey killer you are, I want your thoughts on what you should think I should do in the morning.
Well, give me a little breakdown of what happened.
So basically, it's been super, super windy around where where I live, and today was not as windy as it was yesterday. And I went out this afternoon and knew where some turkeys had been going and had been spending some time. And I was on top of a ridge and basically just going along this ridge, just back and forth, which is a pretty big ridge, just trying to strike one up. And I mean, I heard a faint gobble, and I was like, man, with as windy as it is, I mean, that could be closer than what I think. So I sat down and gave it about 45 minutes. Nothing ever happened, so I ended up moving. And I was like, heck, it's been windy. I'm just going to go down the bottom. So I tried this creek bottom and got one to sound off, and within a matter of 15 minutes, I mean, he was in about 60 or 50 yards. I just didn't pull the trigger. I just don't, I don't really want to kill a bird outside of 40, to be honest with you. But basically, I called in this old logging road, and on one side of the logging road, there wasn't as much vegetation and cover to hide in, and I chose the other side because there was more cover, better hide, and he come within probably 15 yards of where I called and hung up and just strutted for a good, I'd say probably 10 minutes. And then after a while, I just sitting there watching him, and then all of a sudden he just took off and starts running the other way. And I thought I could see him about 150 yards, 200 yards away from where he took off at. And I let out a little bit, just a couple of calls, just real soft yelp. And, basically never heard him again. And then pretty much just called it an evening.
Yeah, well, you got a lot of good things going for you. The first is most importantly is you scouted your area before you went in, and you've got a lay of the landscape and the land. So you're trying to go in tomorrow morning with the agenda to chase that same turkey. And hopefully that bird was spooked off because a coyote or maybe another gobbler, maybe come in there and naturally uh, gave that bird some disturbance other than this human hunting pressure. And so we'll guess or assume that that's it. But I would definitely think about my approach in the morning. Paul's shared a camp or two with me. I've been kind of made fun of over the years for maybe leaving a little bit earlier than everybody else, but that's okay. While everybody else is hunting for 8 or 9 hours, maybe I got up an hour or two earlier than everybody else, and I may be back at camp with a turkey hanging by its feet. So you got to use the cover of darkness. You've got to use that terrain to get in there and try to get really tight because there's hens in the area, and you are going to probably have to let the turkey wake up on its own. A lot of people may think, well, I'll hoot or whatever. The bird's going to be in there. Just kind of let things naturally progress and do their things. It's going to be really up to you and your gut and your instinct of what your heart and your mind tells you in the morning. If those hens start talking to that gobbler, then you're going to have to start talking to him too. But you can start talking after they start talking. And it's kind of like setting rules with employees at work or setting rules in a classroom. You can start off really tight and strict, but you can loosen up if you need to, but it's really hard if you start off really loose and sloppy and then try to tighten things up. So let those hens and that gobbler kind of bring the morning alive naturally, and don't rush the process. I mean, those birds, some mornings are going to fly down better than others. The wind, the cloud cover, all those things are going to be in consideration. But you're talking about your hide and your cover. Think about that east sun. Think about having that sun at your back. Think about your scouting. Where have those birds been going? What is their morning routine? What's their natural or their most likely course of travel that they're going to take so that you're already in front of them? But can't stress enough to you either that if you use that terrain and that darkness to your advantage and you can get in on them tight, don't be moving on them, while they're on the limb gobbling. I'm talking about, like, hey, he's going to be on this ridge and I can get there and be tight. Try to be sitting down and in a position where you can play chess or checkers really aggressive. And don't force those birds, whether it's the hens or the gobbler or multiple gobblers. You may get in there tomorrow morning and there'll be multiple turkeys gobbling. Just don't force it. Those birds, if you don't bump them and pressure them, are going to be there all day. And if you push the situation or you try to be too aggressive to a point to where you booger or you spook those birds, then you're putting the odds against you. So, try to think with the execution of a sniper. Try to think of the execution of, I don't want them to know that I'm here. They're naturally going to live. They're naturally going to gobble. They're naturally going to strut, and they're naturally going to be turkeys. So try to naturally just blend in and don't be that human presence. Just be a turkey. Become a turkey to kill turkeys. And that will help you. And if there gets to a point where you're having to make a really aggressive move, 2 thumbs up. But don't do it if you don't have other turkeys to go to on another farm or another public piece to do it. So, high risk, high reward, all that stuff can work at different points in times, but you've got a flock of turkeys. Don't ever take that for granted. It may take you 2 or 3 days to chase those turkeys. It may take you all season not to kill that turkey. And just chasing that one flock may make you a better turkey hunter for the rest of your life.
Well, I appreciate it. So you don't think that I really don't know if he's seen me or if he just my first thing is like maybe he saw a coyote or I have no idea, but I mean he took off out of there. My initial thought was maybe a coyote, but I talked to a buddy of mine and I was like maybe he just once he got in there close enough to where he thought, here's the last time here's the last place I know that I heard her talk.
Well, God willing, you get to see that sunrise in the morning. That turkey's probably going to forget about everything that happened the night before, or at least be settled down. So go in there with that caution that if he is rattled, you're being extra careful. But don't don't make it a process to where you get to where you're indecisive. You know that you have a ridge, or you know you have a logging road, or you know you have a holler or a draw, and you know where your transition areas are going to be, and you know that turkeys are going to get down in the morning, and those hens got two things on their mind for sure in the morning. They're, one of them's probably going to be to feed, scratch, and the second one is, if they're still hanging around him or he's hanging around them, is to be bred, because that's what time of the season it is. And they've got all day to kind of get that done. And that gobbler is going to stay with those hens that he's not bred yet. And so, just work your way around that terrain with him. Don't push him. Hopefully he'll stay gobbling for you. But, just try to call and remember that I think calling is extremely important. It's a great skill to have, and there's lots of different options of calls, but calling is sometimes uh, the most overrated part of turkey hunting, and other times it's the most crucial part of closing the deal. But your woodsmanship is going to kill that turkey early in the morning before your calling ever does. And if you can get in there and be a good woodsman, uh, that right there will allow you to make a turkey sound or call just bare minimum, because sometimes it's less is more. But put the terrain to your advantage. Don't let yourself get psyched out. A lot of people do that, and if you oversleep 5 or 10 minutes, or something's happening with the sun that's coming up and it took you longer to get in there than what you thought, just calm down, sit down, listen to him gobble, listen to them yelp or cut or cackle or fly down, and know that you're going to have to try move A or B, and you can go in there tomorrow and look like a rock star. You can go in there and look like a fool, but that turkey will let you know how aggressive he's going to be tomorrow on the limb. So just let nature wake up on its own and trust your gut. Um, know that some of the best things that you carry into the woods or to the field with you is your knowledge, not your gear. Gear helps you sit more comfortably. Gear makes you sound more like a turkey. Gear makes you hide, but your knowledge is going to tell you where those turkeys are at and where those turkeys are going, and your experience and knowing that terrain is going to allow you to be basically the ultimate predator, to put yourself in a position to where you can outwit or outsmart that turkey. And the other thing is, there's a lot of turkey hunters and a lot of different turkey hunts, and they all go down in different ways. But some of the best turkey hunts I've ever had have come from the birds that I never got to pull the trigger on. So the success of that hunt, it may not be in killing that gobbler. The success of that hunt may be that you got to chase that turkey for 45 minutes or 2 days or 3 hours or a week or a whole season. And sometimes they just beat you. And that's a rewarding part of it. And like I said, sometimes more so than the ones that we get to throw in the back of the truck.
Hey, Scott, you and me, or we're getting ready to go on a trip up to Indiana to hunt on some public ground. And what's great about that is you organize this event, but we got a lot of great people in a lot of different industries that we're going to be communicating with, learning from, and working with. I want you to tell me a little bit about who all is going to be there and kind of what they do.
Well, we're going to be with a really good group of gentlemen that represent a lot of really good companies. And what we'll be doing is collaborating to see what the industry needs, conservation efforts, what type of employees they're looking for, how folks like myself can train youth in a classroom setting to make good employees. And I mean, we'll start off with you. I mean, you're a real estate agent and working for Mossy Oak Properties, and there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's a real estate office every town that you go to, and I'll be picking your brain, like what makes Mossy Oak Properties different than the competitor, and what's the market like, what's property selling for, what's hot, what's not, what counties do you have plenty of inventory of property in? What are timber prices doing? We'll back and forth that for 3 or 4 days. And then Chad Rice will be coming with Cruiser Saddles and bringing some of his social media crew and his employees there with them, that will talk a lot about where the industry is going with the sale of saddle equipment and saddle platforms, and how there's more saddle companies out there, and what's going on with new designs and prototypes that they have for other arenas of hunting. And we'll bounce some stuff back and forth, because Chad's there out of Cookeville, Tennessee, and we'll be talking turkey dynamics with some of the folks from the USDA and game wardens and DNR officials. Greg with Meadow Creek Mounts, of course, will be there. And Greg has revolutionized the way in which people can put a optic on a shotgun by using a rib mount. And he's got this new receiver mount. And so we'll talk a little bit with Greg about what's hot and what's not. And right there in the same content and arena, we've got the guys from BCO Outdoors, Jake and Hawk for sure, will be coming in, TSS experts, choke experts. They're running all kinds of different gauges, all kinds of different guns. And we'll talk about where YouTube is going and where their subscribers are and how people can generate revenue off of YouTube. And we've got a individual with extreme blower products where we can sow seed in highly silted areas where you can't get equipment into, especially with our waterfowl folks and folks that are trying to get an early start on standing grain crops, to get some of those annuals in and some perennials in while those crops are still in the field. And Jim will be telling us about a new tree planter that he's got, along with a piece of implement that is allowing us to plant more natives over more acres, which is just a very big topic right now with the NRCS and the USDA, and land management is part of it. Kevin Murphy with Small Game Nation, he's a advocate and always beating the drum for why we need to get more people out there shooting squirrels and rabbits, and how if we manage our habitat, squirrels and rabbits will be a whole lot better off, and so will all other game species. NRA will have some representation there for our rights to own and bear arms, which is so important, and some taxidermists and local people with the road department and county government to talk about tourism and how the impact of hunting seasons change the road traffic from law enforcement to restaurants and hotels and all the economics of it. That's just a few of them, Paul, along the way. So yeah, will we be turkey hunting a little bit? You bet. Looking at it from the outside, would people maybe think that we're just taking off work for 3 days to turkey hunt? Maybe so, but you've been there. We've done this multiple years, and there's a whole lot more going on than a turkey hunt. And when we leave there at the end of the week, we're continuing to make conservation strong, the economy strong, and the character of the hunter is being represented. And in the end, we're all there for youth and kids, and it's to allow us to develop some of the best curriculum that's not just available in the local school district that I teach in, but it's a way in which we're looking at this on a national level. And it's getting better each year, and it's gaining attention, and everybody's there for the right reasons. And that's all that you can ask for. A little bit of food along the way, and maybe a lucky hunt here or there, and we'll have another year wrapped up and probably be planning for the next year, Paul.
No, what I've noticed from it, where we did, like Greg, he was a big help to me last year going into this year with the mounts and different things. It's going to help me actually be able to get out and be a lot more successful this time. Unlike last time, I had to try to use a crossbow last time because I was unable to use a shotgun. So, and I've made a lot of good friends down there. So it's definitely worth the price of admission. I will say that. But before we kind of start closing this up, Cameron, do you got any final thoughts or questions you want to ask before we close everything out?
Scott, you've been an awesome guest, and couldn't thank you enough for hopping on here and talking turkeys. And heck, we kind of hit on a little bit of everything tonight, and I just want to say thank you. And I appreciate, everything you've done and you continue to do, and just think the world of you. And if I could ever do anything for you, you just holler at me and let me know.
I appreciate y'all. It takes a whole lot of us to make everything happen, and not everything that you need to know in life is going to come in the form of a college degree, PhD, or a certificate that you earn online. We need to just keep young people engaged in the outdoors, make sure that we keep our mental health strong and healthy and our families strong and healthy, and keep ourselves in the outdoors and not let work and stressors keep us out of the places that we love to be. And we all just need to admit that we're aging, and it's something that we want to do long term, and we want to have places to go long term. And that's why all of us put our time, energy, and efforts together. And doesn't matter if it's a 30-minute podcast or a 3-hour podcast. The whole purpose of this is knowledge and passion, and I'm proud of it. Proud to call both of you my friends, and same respect back to you, Paul, where we started this program. It's you'll always have my support. You'll always have me as a friend, and you'll always have a place to hunt if you ever need some place to go.
Well, I appreciate you coming on tonight. Thanks, Cameron, for being on. Thanks, Scott, for being on. This is going to be a good listen, and I hope everybody shares it. Let us know what your thoughts are. Be sure to comment on it. We want to know what you think. If you got questions, that way when we have Scott back on, maybe we can ask him some of the questions that the listeners put out there to us. So thank you again for being on with us tonight, Scott.
All right, buddy. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you.